All right, welcome back to the Championship Round Shows. Let's talk about it today. As I was getting ready, feeling like I just don't have it today. And getting this going or getting this back going from when we used to do it, it it kind of tests you, you know, especially being a little older, a lot older than when we did it the first time around. You just there are probably more questions than answers, and more questions that you have about yourself. Can you still do what you used to do? Because in the old days, we would almost, there were some times when I would do a daily talk, and sometimes those went an hour to an hour and a half just by myself. And then, as I said, when we did the Big Friday show, it would be two of us, and we would go 3, sometimes 4 hours, and just go on different subjects. And so, coming back to that, there's just you have a lot of questions about yourself and whether you still have anything to offer, and that probably has a lot to do about with getting older. So, if that's an encouragement at all to anyone who's getting older, don't be afraid to get back on the horse again, or try something new, or try something that you haven't tried in a long time, whatever that might be. You know, in something that might be doing here, or you might want to get out and start walking or running again, or whatever you used to do, lifting weights, anything in life. Of course, most importantly, um, firing up that relationship with God in Jesus Christ, and that is, of course, the most important thing you could do. But in life, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Don't think that you have, well, I mean, we all have limitations, but don't be afraid to get out there and just in an uncomfortable space and do something that makes you feel uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with feeling uncomfortable. But anyway, I don't digress. I just started. But I wanted to start with I just not feeling like I had it today. So I had to put that out there and be honest. Today as we are starting our study through the book of James, we're going to start in James chapter 1, verse 26, and then we're going to go back and forth, working our way through James. It'll probably be quite a few short little talks about that. But today is Watch Your Mouth, part 1, and you see the little thumbnail we have there, some encyclopedias, a phone book, and all the other stuff we always put up there. But this is an area of great struggle for many, and most, maybe all, at one level or another. There's some people who don't struggle with a lot of things when it comes to their personal speech. They can control it, but maybe behind closed doors, not so much. And that's all of us, I would say. And I'll be honest with you, this is a struggle for me that I've had really most of my life, and there's no excuse for that, to be not short on the handle, where you just say whatever comes to you. Me and my son, we work in a yard service business, and listen, it gets hot out there. Uh, Sticks are flying. We're weed eating a lot of stuff. Rocks are flying, and tempers fly sometimes, and things get said out there that really aren't even, well, definitely not appropriate for this show, but it happens, right? It happens to all of us. I think especially, well, maybe not especially, but definitely with blue collar type of people. You're out there and you hit your thumb with a hammer or something, and you're letting it rip, right? It's unbridled, okay? Um, but when I read James and listened to it so many times throughout the summer, this is the first thing that jumped out to me. Probably, maybe because it's early in the book, maybe because I really needed to think about it and hear it. But um, if we're not able to keep a tight rein on our tongue, really our speech, our religion, our worship, or our perceived devotion, sometimes we perceive that we're more devoted than we are, is worthless, right? And we become like that in the thumbnail, that phone book or that encyclopedia. I'm not talking about specialized books and things like that many people have for their livelihood, whatever you might be, especially preaching. There are encyclopedias, but I'm talking about the old school, these just information about the world encyclopedias. And phone books that we used to have in the old days. But let's read James 1:26 and then go from there. It says, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Strong medicine for the soul on a Friday afternoon. And really, it's something that everyone needs to hear. I need to hear it. You need to hear it. No, nobody is is immune from this, especially in the. It just seems that the days we live in, it just seems even worse. There's no fear to say anything to anybody, especially with the internet, and chats and comments. Even even on our in the early days, I've only been doing this since last Friday. Put out a video, one of our lawn mowing shorts or our yard work shorts, and somebody just felt free. Of course, their name was not a name; it was numbers and and hash mark or hashtags and everything else. So it wasn't a person, but they felt free to let me have it. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Where did that come from? That's what you got out of what I put there. So it was kind of weird, I mean, the whole, sometimes social media can be so weird. But I want to share another translation. This is a translation actually done by one scholar. Most of like the NIV, NASB, different ones, ESV, they're done by committees of scholars, and they work together. But every once in a while, a Bible scholar will come out with their own translation. They work through the entire New Testament or Old Testament, and they will work through the Greek or the Hebrew, and they will come out with a translation. One of my favorite scholars is Scott McKnight, and he came out with something, and this was his translation of that verse. He says, if someone seems to be a worshiper, not restraining one's tongue, but deceiving one's heart, such a person's worship is useless. Right? It's useless. So if we believe, or if we suppose, or we consider ourselves to be religious, yes, a worshiper. Some people think religious, they think of just church attendance, and they don't take it much past that. It doesn't really have an impact other than that duty of church service, of going to a church service or a mass or whatever the case might be on a Sunday morning. And so they think that they've fulfilled the duty, but what he's saying here in James is if we believe ourselves to be religious and don't keep a tight rein, we're going to talk about horses later in James and bridles and things like that, but don't keep their tongue, their speech, the things that they say. If we are not keeping that in check, we deceive ourselves, right? We mislead ourselves. It's like this. So we've all seen this, and maybe have been this at times. I probably have myself. But the heavy drinker, actually, who can't be confronted without blowing up. He doesn't want anybody, and I'm not talking about folks that have wine with their dinner or a couple of beers with their pals on the weekends. You're not going to get that argument on this channel. I don't really think you can justify that. I don't, unless it was to make someone else who's struggling with that struggle even more by seeing you drink. That's a different deal. But what I'm not talking about you and your wife go out to dinner, you have your friends and you have wine, or you go to sushi and you have, I can't remember what that stuff is, it's sushi, the drink they have there, or you and you guys are watching a game and maybe you have a beer or two and a cigar. We're not talking about that. What I'm talking about is maybe the guy or the gal who just drinks heavily and they can't be confronted. You can't say anything to them, right? Or somebody in a long-term relationship, they're enduring abusive behavior by their mate. Maybe even they might even be beating them, but abusing the hell out of them with their language at least, right? No control. So they're deceived. They don't think they're that guy, but they are that guy that's abusive. They are that guy that slaps their wife or their mate around. Okay? And or the person, definitely been that guy who thinks they're being productive and they're watching YouTube, right? If you're me, they're on YouTube videos watching things when I should be getting the championship rounds ready, watching the debates and all the stuff I watch, or sports or wrestling or whatever the case may be. Hey, SummerSlam weekend, so we're going to be watching wrestling. But we become that person, or they're on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is, Netflix. But we're going down that trail thinking we're productive, but we're deceiving ourselves. And what does he say? He says our religion, our worship is worthless. We become like that phone book. Remember the phone books back, well, even encyclopedias, I remember back in the day, they would only come out every 5 or 10 years, and they would sell them door to door. And some of these, I think they used to go for around 1,500 when I was doing research and looking that up. Can you imagine somebody knocking on your door trying to sell you that today in the age of the internet? Or, I mean, even when I was in junior high, we had to memorize the presidents. That's where you went. And thankfully, we had the letter P. We didn't have them all, but thankfully I had the letter P so I could look up the names of the presidents. We become like that. We become like that. With the phone book, when they used to throw them on your front door, these things were like, especially I grew up in Sacramento, things were like 2,000 pages, 2,500 pages of phone numbers of businesses. And when you wanted to, you wanted to go, well, what's the number of the pizza parlor? You got this big old book out, and you flip through, and you go into P, and then you go through all the pizza parlors to find the one you wanted, and you call them up. Hey, what are your hours, right? You want a plumber, you look up plumbers, whatever. You want to go to the record store. Hey, Tower Records, how late you all open? Well, they were open to midnight. What time you open in the morning? We would do that. That's what happens with our religion when we don't keep control of our speech. We become like that phone book that you might be able to find on eBay for $5 or something. We become like those encyclopedias that are worthless. I wouldn't ask for somebody for information and then to go to their bookshelf through all their 25-volume Encyclopedia Britannica to look something up. It's worthless. That's what our religion becomes like. It's idle. It's empty. It's fruitless. It doesn't add up. You've got our speech over here, dropping whatever language we might be dropping, F-bombs, gossip, cruel speech, whatever it might be. If we're not keeping control of that, if we're not keeping that in check, if we're not keeping a strong, tight rein on that, nobody walks it out perfectly, right? None of us do. But if we're not it talks about keeping a tight rein, keeping it in check. If we're not doing that, we become like that old, dusty Encyclopedia Britannica sitting probably at the Goodwill store, or that old phone book that's worthless. We become worthless in our religion. And how much more worthless is that religion as compared to the phone book, as compared to the encyclopedia, is our uncontrolled speech. We all do it. And sometimes when we do it, it's hurtful. It's hurtful to the ones we love. When it's done behind closed doors, we can't justify it. I can't justify it. None of us can. And as I tell you, when I go through these shows, the first person that this goes through is me. So I have to filter what I'm speaking about through me and point the number one finger at myself and say, I can do better in this area. But we can only do better in this area through the grace of God and through daily prayers of saying, God, please help me to be a better man, a better woman, not to attain salvation. By no means am I saying that, but to be a better example of being a Christian, of being a man, of being a woman, of a young person. But it's a process, and it's a process to bridle our speech. It really is. And we live in a time where I even know, well, just YouTube is a wild place. And some folks who they walk a very fine line of being abusive with their speech. And I'm talking about channels of ministry, and it can get abusive out there and in the debates and whatnot. And it becomes very insulting to the point of where it's all justified. Anything goes. And we can do better through the Holy Spirit, through walking in step with Christ, through waking up daily and saying, and it doesn't, when we talk about prayer is just our conversation with God, our worship to God, our songs to God, and our speech to God, and asking for help in the areas where we need help So I hope that this talk was helpful today. Speaking about needing help, I hope that this little talk was helpful. I encourage you to go back and look at chapter 1, verse 26 of James, and just read the whole first chapter, because we're going to talk about the next section will be worthless religion. Next week, I'm going to try to put I had wrote a little bit. I was going to do something else today, but I knew I needed to get this started. So I have another little thing in my back pocket that I need to talk about today too. When I just seeing the things around me and seeing the struggles that people go through, and I'm gonna do that. But I pray that all is well. I pray that you're able to enjoy this message, and I pray that it has blessed you. And we will see you on the next time on the championship rounds.